Hi everybody, welcome back to Enjoy English with Sudan, right? And good evening, right? And well, today I'm going to talk to you about the usage of the, right? Already in my video I've posted, I've talked to you about when you gotta pronounce THE as the and when you gotta pronounce it as the. And here I've brought in 26 rules, which you gotta follow when you pronounce, when you use the, right? And sometimes we use the when it's not necessary, and sometimes we don't use it when it's necessary, right? So I'm gonna really equip you with the knowledge of using the today. It's very important, right, in our language. Wait for it. Well, the is a definite article. It's used to particularize a noun. So the is used when you're referring to something which is known by the speaker and the listener. And you've got 26 rules, while you're using the, which you gotta follow dedicatedly. So we're going to see the rules one by one now. Okay. Yeah, let me go through the first rule for you in using the, or the you call it, right? So the first one is when we talk about a particular person or thing or one already referred to. For example, sentence, I'm giving you a sentence, so he gave me an apple. The apple was very sweet. So here, if you see, the first sentence, it tells he gave me an apple. And second time, when you talk about apple, you gotta use the. That's why after that, the next sentence it tells the apple was very sweet. So apple is something which has been introduced already in the first sentence. Second time, when you're trying to refer to it, then you gotta use the or the. Here you gotta pronounce the, right? You gotta pronounce THE as the. Why? The noun apple starts with a vowel sound. So that's why the sentence is like this, he gave me an apple. The apple was very sweet. That's how you do it, right? Good. The second rule is when a singular noun is meant to represent the whole class. For example, the cow is a useful animal. So you're taking the noun cow to talk about the whole family of the cow, the whole cow's family, the whole lot of cows in the whole world. So when you want to tell something of that sort, then you have to use the in front of it. The cow is a useful animal, and also we can say a cow is a useful animal also, right? We can use the cow is a useful animal, a cow is a useful animal, both are right. Because English is a flexible language, right? You got a lot of freedom to use it sometimes, But we should make sure we don't break the rules, but we can bend it, right? The third rule says before some proper nouns, for example, in front of rivers, seas, oceans, bays, etc. Usually we don't use the before a proper noun, but in front of certain proper nouns we can use this, So for example, the Pacific Ocean, the Himalayas, the Ganges, the Arabian Sea, the Hudson Bay. So we can use it like this, all these, the names of rivers, seas and oceans are proper nouns, but still we can use the before it. That's what the rule says, Before mountains we can use it. Mountains and hills we can use the, not before peaks. We are not allowed to use the before peaks. The name of the peak, for example, The fourth rule says before the names of certain holy books, before holy books we need to use the, right? For example, the Bible, the Quran, the Vedas. These are all some holy books which are known to everybody all around, So in front of those holy books, we are allowed to use the. The next one says before musical instruments. So when we are indicating a musical instrument, we gotta use the. So the guitar, the flute, the piano, like that. The next rule says before inventions. For example, we say the computer, we gotta say the computer, right? The steam engine, like that. So I'll give you one example. Sentence using computer, right? The computer is a gift of science. The next rule says before parts of body. They hit him on the nose. For example, right? So when you're referring to a particular part of body, you gotta use the before it. The next rule says before newspapers, but not before magazines, okay? You gotta use the before the names of the newspaper which you're referring to, but not before magazines. For example, the Hindu, the Times of India, the Dinamani, like that, you can use it, right? The next rule says before names of special buildings. For example, the Taj, the Empire State Building, like that, we can use it before certain special buildings. When you talk about, about special buildings and all, you gotta use the before it. The next rule says before names of banks. When you're referring to banks, you gotta use it. For example, the Indian Bank, the State Bank of India, the ICICI Bank, the Federal Bank. So like that you can use it, right? The next rule is before unique things. Some things are unique in the whole world, like, for example, I can tell you the sun, the sky, the earth. I gotta tell the earth. It's not the earth, right? Why? Because the earth starts with a vowel sound, right? So sun is unique. Sun is only one in the whole universe. The sky is also only one. So when you're referring to things of that sort, you gotta use the before it. The next one is before religious groups. So when you're referring to certain religious groups and all, you gotta use the before it. For example, the Sikhs, the Hindus, the Christians, the Muslims, like that. The next rule is before political parties. If you're referring to any political party, then you gotta use the before it. For example, the Congress, the Communist Party, the BJP, the ADMK, the DMK, like that, right? The next rule says before empire, before empires, dynasty, or historical events, right? You gotta use the. For example, the Mauryan Empire, the Harsha dynasty, the American Revolution, like that you can use it, right? The next rule says before ordinals, ordinal numbers, you call it. For example, I'll give you some example sentences. I've got two here. You can meet me on the third floor. So when you're referring to any floor or any number of that sort, you can use it like that. He was the first person to arrive. So you're referring to someone who came first. Here you can use it, right? Next rule says before names of aeroplanes, ships, trains, etc. The Air India, the Vikrant, the Rajdhani. So Air India is referring to a flight, the Vikrant refers to a ship, the Rajdhani refers to a train. Like this you can use it. And the next one I can tell you, just give me a second. So when you're referring to groups of islands, the next rule says this. Now, when you're referring to a group of islands, but not before a single island, you shouldn't use it before a single island. If you're referring to group of islands, then you gotta use the before it, right? For example, the Andamans, the West Indies, the Maldives, but not before Bermuda, Sri Lanka, Ireland. Why you shouldn't use it before these three countries, these three islands rather, it's because these are all single islands. So we shouldn't use it before it. And we gotta follow it. That's what the rule is, right? We gotta follow it. The next rule says before directions. For example, the north, the east, the south, the west, like that. Oh, for example, the next rule says, before certain countries we gotta use it. But we are not going to use the before each country when you're referring to each country in the whole world. We shouldn't use it. But for certain countries we gotta use the, right? For example, the Netherlands, the Sudan, the USA, the UK. So for these countries, we gotta use the before it. The next one is before designations. When you're referring to designations, you gotta use the, for example, the Prime Minister, the President, the Queen, the King, the Headmaster, the Principal, like that you can use it. And the next rule says with superlatives. With superlatives, you gotta use it, when you're talking in superlative degree, right? You gotta use it. For example, Sachin is the best cricketer. So you're trying to mean that he is the number one. The whole lot of players, cricket players, he is the best. He is the number one, so in those scenarios, you gotta use the. The next rule says before radio, but with television it's optional. So you can use the before radio. When you're referring to radio, you gotta use it. But with television, when you're referring to television, it's optional, right? For example, she listens to the radio. What is on television now? No. So there, if you want, you can use the. You can even say what is on the television now. And even you can say what is on television now. You can use the, or you can just skip it, right? But if you say TV, then you shouldn't use the there, okay? So if you're referring to the television in its short form as TV, then you shouldn't use the before TV, right? That's what the rule says, okay? So the next rule is when we compare two persons, things, or places, Who is the elder of you two? So when you're comparing two people, you gotta use the, right? Another example I can give you, Chitra is the more charming of the two girls. Here all of you see, you gotta use it. Now you're comparing Chitra with another girl whose name is not given, right? So here you gotta use the, right? The next rule says before an adjective when the noun is understood. So you can use the before adjectives when the noun is understood. So when I say the noun is understood, means after the adjective the noun is not used, right? For example, the poor should be helped. So there, if you see people, the noun which gotta be used is not used, but it's an understanding what we have there. It's reference to poor people, right? The poor should be helped. The foolish speak without thinking. The wise think before speaking. Well, the next rule says when two actions increase or decrease at the same rate. in that scenario you gotta use the, right? For example, an example sentence, the more you learn, the more knowledge you gather, right? Two things increasing or two things decreasing, you gotta use it, right? The more you learn, the more knowledge you gather. The more you don't learn, the more knowledge you don't gather. It's the negative side of it, right? The units how things are sold. The next rule, the units how things are sold. Cloth is sold by the meter. Milk is sold by the liter. Mangoes are sold by the dozen, right? Indeed, folks, it was really a long session, I reckon, because it's been 10 to 15 minutes of tenure, on this video, right? And I reckon you all have imbibed it in your minds, If not, you can go through it once more, right? We're not going to lose anything in that, no. So we can observe it very well and apply it, implement it in our language, It's good to perfect the language, right? And so that you get the flow and the fluency of the language, So, well, I'll see you next time, and until then, I want to say bye-bye. God bless everybody.